This video is not for whales and dolphins, it's for you because you are just like me, Average Gamer here, and today I want to talk about Caesar. So Caesar is coming back in the second half of 2.0, and the last time she ran was back in 1.2. So that was back in September. It feels like it's been a while, and if you're like me, you might be thinking, well, you know, I said maybe I'd get her next time, and here we are, not getting her. So here's the thing about Caesar. She's pretty good in a whole bunch of different situations. She's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. She's a pretty good gap filler. She can buff. She can provide a 1000 attack buff and a 25% damage bonus, which is not bad by any means. She can also stun. You can put impact on her engine. Her defensive assists actually do build up stun pretty quickly. And she provides interrupt resistance and a shield that is ginormous. So she is really good for survivability as well. So she does offer quite a lot of things, and I'm going to talk specifically about like my situation, and I'm guessing what would also be a similar situation for other players who've been playing the game for a while is that, you know, from a support perspective, we kind of have filled those gaps. From a stun perspective, we've kind of filled those gaps. So the only thing that she really does provide is that shield and the interrupt resistance, which again is not something that's completely unnecessary, especially if you're not particularly good at the game. If you kind of would prefer to mash buttons and still win and still clear the endgame content without that much trouble, then sure, you can get Caesar. But if you want your damage output to be higher with the same level of investment, because for example, right now you could pull Astra because Astra is on the first half of the 2.0 banners. And to be honest, by the time you watch this video, I'm recording it like a day beforehand. So it might not actually go up in time for that point to make much sense. But I guess what I'm saying is that the limited S ranks that we have, they don't exist in bubbles, right? So you could pull Astra in the first half of 2.0, or you could pull Caesar in the second half of 2.0. And I think that pulling Astra is a way better call. Astra can buff all of your characters at once, whereas Caesar is only going to buff the on-field character. So that's also a downside to the buffs that she provides, is that yes, they're pretty big, but Caesar doesn't work very well with anomaly characters because she's only buffing the on-field agent. So if you have an off-field anomaly applier, like a Vivian or a Bernice, she's just not buffing them in the same way. And I guess what would be a little bit frustrating for Caesar and Jaws is that even Lucy's buff can be better than Caesar's because she buffs the whole team as opposed to just the on-field character. So even though the attack buff is much smaller with Lucy, I think it's 600 versus 1000 with Caesar, you can still find that you'll have bigger damage output with Lucy. And we'll talk about this some more in just a moment. But before then, this is your reminder that you probably aren't subscribed. Like and subscribe is a great way to support creators like me on YouTube. You can also drop me a follow over on Twitch where I yap about this stuff pretty regularly. And you can also join the Discord for help with your builds and if you want to just hang out in a cool, chill place. So I don't want to downplay it though. She's still a limited S rank agent. And even though she's a jack of all trades, she's still a good option in all of those places. It's just that we now have much better options. I do a lot of account reviews and account help when I'm on stream, and a number of times I'll go into people's accounts and I find that they have Caesar and they're trying to force endgame content, and sometimes Caesar is just the perfect character to fill that gap, i.e. to help build up days and to buff up your characters. And she can do both of those things, and she can do them pretty darn well. So I guess what I'm also saying is that like if you are someone who's not particularly great at the game, someone who prefers just to mash and not worry about dodging, someone who's a mobile player and is kind of struggling to keep up with the content as it starts to get harder, Caesar's maybe not a bad pickup for you. But I think that the key thing that I want to drive home is that the limited S rank characters don't exist in bubbles where they're worth more or less depending on the value of that particular agent. They're all going to cost you the same amount in theory. You know, on average, they're going to cost you the same amount. Sure, you might get her in temples if you're incredibly lucky, but chances are that each character is going to cost you the same amount, and therefore we should treat them all as though they are all the same. And if that's the way that we measure them, then we should rank them all to that same level. And Caesar at the moment just doesn't feel like she's going to be worth the pulls for most players. And we haven't really talked about waifu players at this point. Yeah, I mean, if Caesar is waifu and you missed her first run because you joined in 1.4, because of Miyabi, or you joined in 2.0 because of Yixuan, and now you're looking at a rerunning character, you've played through the story, you loved Caesar, and you really want to pull for her, then yeah, sure. I mean, by all means, go for it. You're not going to be too upset about that. I mean, she does have a decent pair of personalities. What I would exercise a bit of caution with though is that newer players might be tempted initially to pull Caesar because she is a great gap filler, but you will eventually find better characters to replace her in those slots. So for example, if you pulled her for a Ju Yuan team, so I've played Caesar on a Ju Yuan team a fair few times. I don't have Caesar, but through account help and stuff. So I played Ju Yuan, Caesar, and Nicole. And those teams do tend to function really well. Caesar takes the slot of both the stun, and she can also help to support as well because she's going to provide an additional buff, as we've already discussed. And Nicole is also going to be buffing up Ju Yuan. So that means that everything is built around Ju Yuan, as much damage as she possibly can during a stun window. Caesar's going to help you get there faster, and she's also going to provide some additional buffs. Is she going to get there as fast as a dedicated stun agent? No, but she's just not going to be as effective as a dedicated stun agent like Qingyi or Trigger or even Ju Fufu now. And I guess that's the problem, right? You might be tempted to pick her up to fill a gap initially, but then, and I think this does tend to happen, is that you'll continue to play for 6 months plus, and then you'll reach a point where you'll have brought in other characters, and then you'll replace her in those positions. And then she'll just sit there not really doing anything, and you'll realize that maybe it wasn't the best pull. Now, if you do want to push further in tower, like we've already mentioned, the survivability is a good aspect of Caesar. If your only goal with Zenless Zone Zero is to push further into tower, where there is 0 rewards, then sure, yeah, she's also going to enable you to do that. And the last thing that I should mention, and I saved this right till the end, I don't know why, probably should have said it at the start, because I should have mentioned it in my Ju Fufu video, and I really didn't, but we've already talked about the limited S rank that is Astra, and Astra is an incredible supportive agent. But the key thing that I want to talk about here is that Yuzuha is coming next patch in 2.1. And Yuzuha is a limited S rank support. And honestly, probably don't need much more than that to throw some caution to the wind in terms of how you're spending your pulls in this 2.0 patch. And like I said, I probably should have mentioned this in my Ju Fufu video, but that video was very much geared to Ju Fufu being an unnecessary character anyway, but I'm mentioning it now, and I've mentioned it several times on stream. But I do believe that if Astra is our only metric for what a limited S rank support agent looks like, then we should be all preparing for the idea that we should pull Yuzuha. You can choose not to, of course, and she won't be necessary to clear content, I don't believe, just in the same way that Astra is not necessary to clear content now. But I do think that Yuzuha is going to be a very, very good pickup for a lot of players. So with all of that in mind, I just don't think Caesar's worth it for the pulls. She doesn't buff enough to be a good enough supportive agent in comparison to your limited S rank supports, i.e. the upcoming Yuzuha and Astra, so you should save your pulls for Yuzuha, or you should use your pulls on Astra in the 2.0 banner. And she doesn't stun fast enough or provide enough buffs for the stun window specifically that she's as good of a stunner as Trigger or Qingyi or Ju Fufu. And then the only real thing that she does provide is that survivability, the shield, the interrupt. A lot of players who've been playing the game for a while probably are going to value that a lot less, and I think that's okay. But if you are a mobile player, you're struggling to clear content just from a survivability perspective, I don't think Caesar's too crazy to pick up, but just know that she's not an optimal pick. And you can also pull for your waifu. Born to shoujo, forced to shonen. Anyway, let me know what you guys are planning to do about Caesar in the next patch down below. I've also explained why it's probably a smart play to skip Ju Fufu as well. As always, remember to like and subscribe for better and average luck on all your pulls. Pull responsibly, stay weird. Bye, 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 bye.